Hi, Internet. I'm Ninjustin, and we're doing Discourse Dojo. Over there is
I'm
Jabber.
I'm Jarrett, and I'm also doing Discourse Dojo.
Yeah,
And this is Discourse Dojo. Welcome.
this is
This
Discourse
is our
Dojo.
new best opening.
Welcome. Okay, so what Jabber and I wanted to. By the way, your name's Jabber now. I
Why?
uh, I tried to type Jerbear in my phone, and Swipe said the closest thing was Jabber, and I was like, that's the best nickname for Jareth I've ever heard.
But Jarrett is already a nickname.
I know, and Jerbear is the nickname of Jareth, and Jabber is a nickname of Jerbear.
But how
So,
about Jarneth?
Jarneth?
Where does Jarneth feature into it?
That might be another branch from Jareth.
Because that's what Mumbles and Josh call me.
I know, it's great. Sometimes I call you that when we're on Vent, but we're on TeamSpeak, so I call you whatever.
Alright.
Anyway, the important thing to note here is that this is Discourse Dojo, and we want to. This time we're not going to be talking about a game. We're going to be talking about a trailer for a game, and issues surrounding that. And I'll post a link to the trailer, but we want to talk about a trailer that's been garnering some controversy, and it's for a game called Hatred.
You may or may not have seen it. We can probably put a link to the trailer in the notes. I don't know if we want to, but we can.
Yeah,
We
I think
probably
I
should
will
if we're
just-
talking about it.
Yeah, just so people who are watching and haven't heard of it, they're like, I want to at least know what they're talking about. So yeah, I'll do that. Now, Hatred, the trailer for it has been garnering a lot of controversy for being just like really, really repulsive and not repulsive as in ugly, but just like morally repugnant and juvenile and stuff. And it's a game where you are an extremely hateful person who is going on a shooting rampage, like a shooting massacre, and that is what the game is. And the game does
That
not
is
hide that at
basically
all.
everything, what it is.
Yeah, it's like the beginning of the trailer is the guy going on a monologue as he's loading a gun, and his monologue is about how he hates everyone and everything, including himself, and he wants to die violently, and so he's going to kill people. And I hope you don't hear my dog barking in the background. But anyway, and it's like we've had a lot of other games that have dealt with that have done like really dark killing people and stuff. The biggest example is Grand Theft Auto, but Grand Theft Auto tends to try to put its game world and its content in a more like comedic fashion.
Mhm.
I mean, generally, it's
Yeah.
gotten darker with GTA 4 and 5, but it still at least has the pretense of being humor.
Yeah, it doesn't really put you in the shoes of somebody who wants to kill people. It just puts you in the shoes of a career criminal or an assassin or a guy with a midlife complex. And it just so happens that to get from point A to point B, you have to run over a bunch of generic NPC types that are
Yeah.
supposed to represent humans.
Whereas-
There's some difference.
Whereas this game just goes head on with like it's done in like grayscale, and it is done with an art style and like audio and everything about it is very clearly meant
It's that Sin
to
City
be...
black and white thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it's like
and
it's supposed to be gritty.
It is very clearly intended to make you feel like you are the murderer killing tons of people, and it's on one hand it does feel like a really cynical attempt to garner controversy. It feels like this generation's Postal. And I don't know, I kind of like the idea of a game that tries to make you deal with like tries to put you in the headspace of a shooter, because like shooting massacres have been happening a lot in America lately. That's kind of become a big talking point. There's a lot of talk about gun law reform and about mental health reform and all of that, because there just keeps happening, these shooting massacres. So
That's
a game that deals
certainly
with
a
that
point.
a game that deals with that is interesting, but I'm not getting the impression that this is going to be a good example of that.
On the other hand, you brought up Grand Theft Auto as a counterpoint, but what it reminds me much more of is games like, what was it called again? Manhunt.
Manhunt, yeah.
Like games where you not just you don't just use violence as a tool. It is very specifically about killing people. And something that you can see in the trailer for this game is that it's not just that you shoot random people, but that it's people just walking across the street, going about their daily lives, and then you start shooting them, and they flee and they beg for their lives, and then you murder them in a very graphically violent fashion. That's no longer the power fantasy of being able to do what you want. That is the power fantasy of being able to murder whoever you want.
Yeah, and it's
that
not,
is different.
That is very different
to me.
And it's very important to note that you are not killing people to get from point A to point B. Killing random innocent people is the objective in this game. That is the only reason that you are in it. And like, the thing is, I read some of what the developer wrote about why they're making the game and stuff, and it's kind of contradictory because they're saying like, we think that games have become too politically correct and sanitized and blah blah blah. And
my official response to that is this.
Yeah, I know. They say it's too politically correct and too sanitized, and yet GTA 5 is like the biggest selling thing ever. Yeah. But anyway, it's like, not only does he say that, but he goes on to say he's like, we think that there should be able to just be a game that's just about killing people with no other pretense, and it doesn't need to be high art or blah blah blah. And then it says like, we want the player to have to get into the mindset of a person who wants to kill people or something like that. And it's like, oh, so you are trying to make an artistic thing here.
Yeah.
Or aren't you? I don't know.
Because of course you are. That is how games work. Unless you make fucking Geometry Wars.
Yeah.
You're going to be putting some form of politics, some form of grander idea in the story of your game.
Some form of context. And you can clearly tell from the art style and from the monologue and everything that it is trying to have a context. It is trying to be political, and it's trying to get political attention. Mm-hmm. Like, that's very clear. So
but it feels to me like it's a game that is trying to boast about how politically incorrect it is in order to get a rise out of the people that would oppose that. Particularly, I think, the politicians and let's just call them the 1 Million Moms kind of organizations, Moms Against Gaming, maybe, who would see that and go, see, that's what games are. And I don't know why you would want to do that, but that seems obviously what they're trying to do.
Yeah. It's like the gaming equivalent of Daniel Tosh. It's like trying to offend everyone. Yeah. And in that regard, I have no respect for this game or anything like that. And I originally planned to not give it any attention, just because like, it's like, I don't want this like cynical shit to get the attention it doesn't deserve. But on the other hand, I'm seeing people's reactions to it and people being really angry and stuff, and I actually saw something on Twitter just this morning that like made me get the idea to either write something about this or do a podcast, and that was somebody saying like, if you're offended by the trailer for Hatred, then where were you when the cop killing sim Payday came out?
Where were you when the dragon broke?
Yeah. He linked to a tweet from like a year ago or something, talking about Payday being a like really repugnant cop killing sim. And
Payday 1 was repugnant, but for other reasons.
Yeah. Well, it made me kind of curious. Well, first of all, calling Payday a sim of any kind is just hilarious, because that game is so just it makes so little sense that there's actually become a sort of fan theory about you can look up the Payday clone apocalypse I think it's an actual thing, or maybe it's just a thing my friends say, but it's basically the theory that the only way that the Payday universe makes any sort of sense is if you accept the idea that the cops are all non-sentient clones. Because otherwise the game just makes no sense whatsoever. You are gunning down wave after wave after wave of cops, and it's like the government would not sanction this. The like fucking military wouldn't sanction this. No, but
They
if
would
you
nuke the city before that happened.
yeah, if four career criminals were able to gun down hundreds of cops, we would not like nobody would deal with that by sending more cops after them. That makes no sense. Like no, that wouldn't happen.
I don't
So
remember who said it, but I like the theory that the environment in this game is either a heaven or a purgatory for criminals because they can do whatever they want. They can basically go to any heist that they want and fight off billions of replaceable police officers. And even if they get captured, it lasts for minutes and then they're put right back. And they're always successful at the end of it. But they also don't really progress because they have to do the same thing over and over
you
and
fail
over
if
again.
you're all dead at the same time.
Yeah, even
Yeah.
then, you can try again. You don't really fail.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
But that's taking the game mechanics into the narrative of it,
But yeah.
which I love doing. So let's do that. Some
Oh
more.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, like Payday is ridiculous and far removed from reality. Although that doesn't really reflect in its visual style. I will give them that like Payday going for the sort of realistic-ish graphics does kind of make it creepy. Like if it had a more cartoony, like Borderlandsy or Hotline Miami-ish aesthetic, that would probably make it less creepy for some people. But basically, the thing that made me really curious and really interested is that there's this issue that a lot of people have in different ways where like they can't really detach themselves from what they have to do in this game as a character, where it's like this is too horrible for me, even though I am not this character. It feels gross to do this. And it's like, I'm not claiming that's never happened to me. It has, but it's like, clearly that line is different for everybody. And that's really interesting, and I don't really know how to properly address that. Like,
address that how? Like, well, how would you want to address it?
like where do we draw a line? Because clearly everybody draws the line somewhere. Like as far not as far as legally like what should be allowed, because I'm not against I'm not for banning games that are seen as repugnant. That's not what I'm trying to say.
No, then we get into the difference between criticism and calls for censorship, which is also something that different people have different levels of agreement with, actually.
Yeah, because that's often a straw man argument. Like somebody's criticizing some game for having really racist or sexist content, and then people will be like, "Oh, are you saying that we're not allowed to do blah blah blah?" And it's like, no, I'm not talking about banning this stuff. I'm criticizing it for being bad, and saying that we should be aware of that.
We're not saying that the game shouldn't be made. We're saying that it's bad and you shouldn't support it. If you want to support it, that's your choice. But for these and these and these reasons, we don't consider it worthy of support.
Right.
But
exactly.
if you want to make it, by all means, as long as you don't break any laws, as long as you don't hurt anyone.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I don't know about you. Like, can you think of one game in particular that just was really off-putting because of what it made you do in the game? Sorry to just put you on the spot.
No, that's alright. You can cut the silent parts anyway.
Yeah,
Let's see if I don't remember having played many of those games myself. Like, I would go for Manhunt, but I haven't actually played Manhunt. Because it's also a fantasy that doesn't really appeal to me very much.
Right.
So the only things that I didn't like doing in games were not ultra-violent and were more like stupid story things. And that's an entirely different topic.
Yeah. I will say that for me, the answer for me is actually interesting because it's a game that got a ton of praise. It's honestly the game that put me off the most for what it made me do was Papers, Please.
Yeah, I
Because
saw you say that.
there was, yeah, I tweeted this, but
Hmm.
basically in Papers, Please, so the whole game is about checking people's passports and shit to make sure that they can be allowed to cross the border, and you have to make sure there are no inaccuracies. And this was back in like 1980. Bear that in mind. The game takes place in 1980. Uh, like LGBT stuff, we were nowhere near tackling any of that. So basically, if a character does not look like what their gender on their ID says they are,
Hmm.
if the dude looks like a lady, as Steve Tyler would say,
Hmm.
then you have to literally do a body scan to make sure that their body, like their sex organs, match what their ID says. And if it doesn't, then you have to send them off
And if you're
because
also a jerk, you can send them off to jail.
yeah, you like if they resist arrest, you send them to jail, and yeah, it's just yeah.
Well, or you can just
That
send them to
that
jail
made
immediately
me
for money
That
if
is
you're a
true.
jerk.
Oh yeah, there's that whole subplot. I forgot. But yeah, no, it's that made me extremely uncomfortable, and that
Yeah,
had
it's
nothing to do with violence or anything. That had everything to do with
see,
just
that's an interesting
violation of
example.
privacy.
Because I played the game too. Obviously, I wrote a review about it
Yeah.
on my old site, which is now dead, so we can't link to it. Wah wah wah. And I did that too, and I had less of a reaction to it, but still similar that this is kind of difficult, like a problematic subject.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really upset by it too much because I felt like Papers, Please goes to a very great lengths to make clear that this is not a good thing. That this
Oh yeah.
entire set of
It
behavior around the border patrol is bad, is not necessarily repugnant, but something that you look down on. And
yeah.
you, as a peg in that machine, can choose to either do what you were told and make money, or not do what you were told and starve and then lose.
Yeah, starve and and also risk being fired.
Yeah. So I think a difference between a game like that and a game like Hatred, which is still nominally our topic, is that in Hatred, it is actually, it seems to be portrayed from the trailer, that's all we have to go on, as something that your character wants, as something that your character is actively pursuing. So, as something that your character thinks is good to do. He says, I'm going to kill everyone and then I'm going to kill myself. So, he presents the murder of the innocent as a praiseworthy thing. And that, for me, is much more triggering than just the act itself being bad,
Yeah. Although
if you know what I mean.
I understand that, but like for me, I think the choice is part of what made it really get to my head with Papers, Please, is that like I could just not
Mhm.
do this, but I'd get fucked over for it.
Yeah.
And also I think it also has to do with the fact that Papers, Please goes to great lengths to make sure you see and know that these are people you're dealing with. I mean, obviously not real people, but
Hmm.
like it humanizes them in a way that most of these games, including well, like GTA and stuff like that, like GTA and Saints Row and all those,
Hmm.
they paint their civilians as just like random stupid assholes who say asinine dialogue that's like supposed to be
Hmm.
satirical. Um, and like with Papers, Please, and also by the looks of it with Hatred, it makes sure you know that these are innocent people who are just trying to get by. And like with Papers, Please, it was like I'm doing this because I know I'll get screwed over if I don't, but God, this is wrong.
It's interesting still that it was that way, but for me, I really quickly slipped into game playing mode. And I was just like, okay, I have to do this correct. I have to do this correct. I have to do this correct. This is a thing that the Border Patrol rules feel is wrong, so I have to check for it. And then I check for it, and it's something that the rules say is wrong. So I. It's interesting that your moral compass is apparently stronger than mine.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's not even like a moral compass. Like in Deus Ex: Human Revolution, by the I remember the final mission is when like the people go crazy because of their AUG chips and basically turn into like zombies, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
they'll stop being crazy once you've deactivated the thing at the final boss and whatever. But for the time being, you're like these guys are in your way, and I had a bunch of friends who like they on the one hand they were complaining that it was hard to get through that area,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I was like, I just blasted through them with my shotgun. It wasn't that hard. And my friend was like, well, I was going non-lethal because those were just innocent people. And
Yeah,
I
that's
was
what I
like,
did too, actually.
I don't care. Like, I'm just blasting through with my shotgun. Like at that point in the game, I had lost my interest in the whole concept of being strictly non-lethal because I guess by that point I had sort of lost my suspension of disbelief, or by that point I had just become impatient and wanted to get to the next plot point. Um, so yeah, it's not even about moral compass. It's just this really weird phenomenon that I don't know what is at the heart of it.
Yeah, it's probably very multifaceted because, like what I said, at that point I was still very much immersed in the game. So I
Yeah.
bought that narrative of these are people, relatively innocent people, that are just being driven crazy by technology. And I had the non-lethal shotgun, which probably still hurts a shitload, but
Oh,
whatever.
the I don't remember what it was called, but yeah, the like
The
beam gun
non-lethal
thing.
shotgun.
Yeah, like pew, and then yeah.
Yeah.
I used
The
that a little bit,
specifically
and then
for
I gave
that part
up.
of the game shotgun. I carried it around in case there was ever a part of the game where I had to non-lethally take out a whole bunch of dudes. And then I did. And it was good. But in
Yeah, yeah.
Papers, Please, I think the main thing for me was that I bought into the narrative in both cases. And Papers, Please goes to some distance to humanize its people, but also to set up the rules in such a way that you, as the border guard, are being dehumanized.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. Like, you
No,
have to
that does
treat
make
people
sense.
like cogs because that's the best way to get through your day. So I did. And in Human Revolution, it went through some ways to set up that these people were blameless. So I didn't want to kill them because that felt wrong.
And the big difference there is that like you had the option to not kill them and to still get by. It just took more work. And I had become impatient by that point. Whereas with Papers, Please, there is no option to let those people go by, without getting in trouble for it.
Yeah. And you can do it. Like, each day you can let a few people slide by without losing
Technically,
money
but
for it. You will
yeah,
still
but
be written up,
yeah,
but
you'll get
without losing
written
money
up.
for it.
Your employers will get pissed off at you and threaten you and stuff. I never actually beat the game, so I don't know if something comes out of all of that because the game just got too hard for me.
Papers, Please?
Yeah.
There's various endings. If you stick with the Republic of Artsotska until the end, I think if you didn't do it flawlessly, you get written up and arrested because the Republic gets more and more paranoid. And if you do it perfectly, I don't know what happens because I'm not going to do that game perfectly. It just
Yeah.
I thought
Good
about
lord.
trying it,
That's
and it just
impossible.
scares me.
That is
Just,
like
you
that.
let a person through, and every time you let a person through, or every time you reject them, you have to sit for a few seconds to wait for that awful, awful fax noise that just goes, you made a mistake. And then
Yeah.
you could just start all over again. Oh.
I don't want to meet the person who got a perfect run of Papers, Please. Like I
Listeners,
don't want
if
to
you
meet
ever
that
did a
person.
perfect run of Papers, please let us know in the comments so we can admire you.
Yeah, and
Genuinely admire you.
yeah, admire you from a good safe distance because good lord. Like, wow. The
Just don't
idea
be a
that
jerk. They're cool people. We love them.
okay.
We love all of you. Even the ones who
Yeah.
didn't do a perfect run of Papers, Please.
Well, yeah.
I don't know if we can love you if you never played it. I mean, I guess still, but let's try to rectify that at some point.
Yeah, yeah. Get it off of a fucking bundle or something. I don't care. Anyway, the point
Back to the
is
topic at hand, Hatred is a game that presents as its narrative that you want to kill innocent people, and then it goes out of its way to present those people as being alive and not being caught up in your bullshit and trying to survive, and it asks of you to murder them all for the reason that you feel like murdering them all. And for me personally, I can already see that that is such a great gap between character and me that it may be impossible to bridge. Particularly because there's also some gameplay in the trailer, and it just looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter.
It looks like a twin stick shooter where you're shooting innocent people, and in that case, like, is there even a challenge? Like,
Even if
maybe.
you are okay with the game coming out, and even if you're okay with the game existing, which more or less I think we are, I prefer it not to, but I'm okay if it comes out. What does it add? Why would someone want to play this game over any of the other games that don't have this morally repugnant load?
And I even like. I was even because I was saying earlier that I'm interested in the idea of a game that tries to tackle shooting massacres. There was actually a song by The Offspring from a few years ago that dealt with that, where it was a guy. It was called Hammerhead, and it was him singing from the perspective of like it sounds like he's a soldier for most of the song, where he's talking about I'm going in and I'm gonna like save the people from harm. Like I'll take 10 lives so that 100 can live and blah blah blah. But then at the
Mm.
very very end of the song, the lyrics change to like so you can cry teacher come help me and you can hide behind your desk whatever. I don't remember the lyrics exactly, but it's like
I
at the
get the point.
very end it changes to where you realize that he's like a shooting massacre person, and it's like that concept really interests me
Ooh.
because we as a culture really need to figure out how to deal with the fact that these people are killing tons of people and themselves because they somehow feel justified in it. And it isn't, we can't write it off as they are mentally ill because that's not
Because a
actually
lot
how
of them are
mental.
not.
Yeah, and that's not even how mental illness works. I'm mentally ill and I've never gone on and tried to shoot people. So I don't like, we need to deal with that, and I'm interested in media that try to tackle that. But once I read that thing that the dev wrote, that just felt like an insult. And like, especially when I started hearing that the lead dev is a neo-Nazi and all that, I
This is
just
also a thing, yes, readers. The people developing this game about murdering everyone, at least one of them is literally a Nazi.
yeah.
Use that the way you will. We're not using it to indict people, even though we probably should because he is a literal Nazi.
Yeah, but it yeah, I don't feel like this game is going to contribute anything valuable to our culture in any way. Um, if it proves me wrong, I'll be very delightfully surprised. But
I mean, it could pull a Spec Ops. I don't think it's going to pull a Spec Ops, but it
yeah,
could pull a Spec Ops.
that's
I mean, we
entirely
were
possible.
all not entirely on board with Spec Ops either until people played it, figured out what happened.
Yeah, so that's a
Just that
possibility.
everything about it seems to point to that they're going to play it straight. And if
Yeah,
they're going to play it straight, then it's going to be a game that narratively I don't want to play, and mechanically I don't see why I would want to play because there are other games that I like better that do the same thing. And in that
and
case,
aren't horribly
it
repugnant.
the only thing that it sells itself on, and I mentioned this earlier, is basically that power fantasy of being able to kill people. Not just for a cause, and not just the fantasy of being strong or being the hero or even being the villain, but the fantasy of being able to walk up to a person, kick them to the ground, put a gun to their head, and pull the trigger and watch their skull explode. Which happens in the trailer if you haven't watched it
Yes,
yet.
there are multiple takedowns that make it extremely clear that these people are just innocent people trying to like not die, and you stop them from not dying by killing them, and
And
that is
this sort
that's
of
it.
shit happens in other games, ultra violent takedowns. It's difficult to judge it on a like communal basis. You can't really say that that sort of stuff is always bad or always good.
Sure, but
So that in case people in the comments want to say, well, that sort of stuff happens in other games too, it does.
yeah,
And in certain
Tomb
other
Raider
games,
had
it's
ultra
awful.
violent takedowns,
Yeah,
but in Tomb Raider it made it extremely clear that these were horrible people who were trying to kill you and your friends and use you to summon an evil goddess of whatever. I don't even
even
remember,
then, I
but
didn't like it. I
well,
felt the
yeah,
game would have
sure.
been better without it.
But it wasn't like you are killing these people because you want to kill people. It wasn't that.
Yeah, I think that is probably the most apt summary of what we think about hatred. It's a game that sells a power fantasy that I don't want to partake in, and that I would really prefer nobody wants to partake in. I understand that they're probably filling some kind of niche, if maybe only their own niche.
Yeah.
And that ties back to, we're criticizing it right now. That doesn't mean we say it shouldn't exist, but it does mean that we say that you should probably really, really, really reconsider whether or not you would want to support a game like this. Because you do send a signal if you give them money.
Precisely. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, maybe this one's a little shorter because what else is there to say? Listeners, if you think that we missed something or if you want to add something to this discussion, by all means, we have a comment section. You know where it is.
Absolutely.
If you're listening to this on YouTube, you can go to our website, which is www.ninja-blues.com, and comment there. I can't promise that we'll read if you comment something on YouTube, because I try to stay off that side as much as possible. Maybe
that
Justin
makes sense.
will.
I hang around YouTube, and yeah, I mean, if you use YouTube, feel free to subscribe to us on that too, so that you can get that. And I read the comments on YouTube. I'll see and I'll try to respond.
If you don't listen to this on YouTube, feel free to still subscribe to us on YouTube and then never go there again.
Absolutely.
You can do that.
I don't know if we ever got the podcast hosting directly from our website to work, because nobody ever commented about that. But
I assume
if it does work, let us know. If it doesn't
they'll just go to YouTube. It works either way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Anyway, let's wrap this up because we're rambling.
Yeah. So fucking Hatred. That game is fucking. That is a game.
No, it isn't. It is a video game in development. If it never sees the light of day, I will not mourn about it. If it does see the light of day, I'll still not necessarily mourn about it, but I'll just shake my head and go, ah.
Yep. And yeah.
Thank you for listening.
You're welcome.